The delivery room was quiet except for the rhythmic beeping of monitors and the soft hum of fluorescent lights overhead. Sophia Harper lay exhausted but radiant, her dark hair damp against the pillow as she cradled one of her newborn twins in each arm. Ethan and Emma, two tiny miracles wrapped snugly in pastel blankets, were perfect in every way. Their blonde hair gleamed faintly under the hospital lights, and their delicate features seemed almost otherworldly. For Sophia, the moment was bittersweet. She had dreamed of this day for years, the joy of becoming a mother, the warmth of introducing her children to their father. But now, staring down at the babies, something felt off. Daniel stood at the foot of the bed, his arms crossed tightly over his chest. His face was unreadable, though the tension etched into his brow spoke volumes. He hadn't held either child yet, nor had he offered congratulations beyond a curt nod when the doctor announced their arrival. "Do they look like me?" Sophia asked softly, her voice trembling slightly. She forced a smile, hoping to ease the unease hanging between them. Daniel hesitated, his gaze flicking briefly to the infants before returning to the floor. "Not really," he said finally, his tone clipped. "They don't look like you either." Sophia flinched as if struck, clutching the babies closer. "What are you saying?" "I'm not saying anything," Daniel replied evasively, avoiding eye contact. But the implication lingered heavily in the air. A fragile foundation. From the beginning, Daniel and Sophia's marriage had been built on compromise. They came from vastly different worlds. He, a man raised in a traditional household where conformity and lineage mattered above all else. She, a woman of mixed heritage who had grown up navigating questions about her identity and belonging. Despite these differences, they fell in love quickly, swept away by youthful passion, and shared dreams of building a life together. But love alone couldn't shield them from external pressures. From the moment they announced their engagement, whispers followed them, disapproving glances at family gatherings, pointed remarks about whether their union would work. Daniel dismissed such comments publicly, insisting he didn't care what others thought. Privately, however, he wrestled with doubts seated long before he met Sophia. Could someone so unlike him truly understand his values? Would their children carry his name proudly or bear the weight of scrutiny because of their mother's background? Sophia, too, carried scars from years of trying to prove herself worthy of acceptance. Her own parents had loved her unconditionally, but the outside world often made her feel like an outsider. When Daniel proposed, she saw it as a chance to start fresh, to build a family where love trumped prejudice. Yet even during their happiest moments, there were cracks beneath the surface, waiting to widen under pressure. The first signs of doubt. As Sophia recovered from childbirth, Daniel's demeanor grew increasingly distant. At first, she chalked it up to stress. He'd taken time off work to support her through the pregnancy, and balancing responsibilities must have been overwhelming. But subtle signs began to emerge that hinted at deeper issues. Late one night, while Sophia fed Emma, Daniel paced the living room, muttering to himself. She caught fragments of his thoughts, words like genetics and impossible, before he noticed her watching and abruptly stopped. Another time, a neighbor remarked how adorable the twins were, adding, "They looked just like little angels." Daniel stiffened visibly, offering only a tight-lipped smile in response. Sophia tried to confront him, gently broaching the subject one evening after putting the twins to bed. "Is something wrong, Daniel? You've been acting strange lately." He hesitated, clearly conflicted. Finally, he sighed and sat down across from her, running a hand through his hair. "It's nothing, Soph. Just tired, I guess." "You can talk to me," she urged, reaching for his hand. "Whatever it is, we'll figure it out together." But Daniel pulled away, standing abruptly. "I need some air," he muttered, grabbing his coat and heading outside without another word. The accusation. Weeks passed, and the distance between them widened. Daniel spent more time at work, using late hours as an excuse to avoid coming home. When he did return, his interactions with Sophia were terse and strained. Even worse, he barely acknowledged the twins, leaving most of the parenting duties to her. Then came the night everything unraveled. It started innocuously enough, a casual dinner interrupted by a phone call from Daniel's brother, Michael. After exchanging pleasantries, Michael casually mentioned having seen photos of the twins online. "They're adorable, Dan," he said, chuckling. "Though honestly, they don't look much like you or Sophia." The comment hung in the silence that followed. Sophia froze, sensing the shift in Daniel's energy even before he spoke. "What do you mean, don't look like us?" Daniel demanded, his voice sharp. Michael backed awkwardly. "Oh, come on, I'm just teasing. Relax, will ya?" But Daniel wasn't listening. His mind raced, replaying every doubt he'd suppressed since the twins' birth. That night, after hanging up, he confronted Sophia. "We need to talk," he said coldly, standing in the doorway of the nursery as she tucked Ethan and Emma into their cribs. "About what?" Sophia asked warily, noting the edge in his tone. "About them." He gestured toward the sleeping infants. "Who are they, Sophia?" "Really?" Her stomach dropped. "What kind of question is that?" "There are children." "Are they?" Daniel snapped, his voice rising despite her protests to keep it down. "Because they sure as hell don't look like mine. Or yours, for that matter." Sophia stared at him, horrified. "How can you say that? How dare you accuse me of?" "Don't act innocent," Daniel interrupted, pacing agitatedly. "You know exactly what I'm talking about. Was it someone at work? A friend? Hell, maybe even the damn fertility clinic screwed up." Sophia felt tears welling in her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. "You're insane. Completely insane. I would never cheat on you, Daniel. These are your children, our children." Daniel shook his head, disbelief etched across his face. "No, no, I can't live like this. Not knowing. Not wondering every time I look at them." Before Sophia could respond, he stormed out of the room, slamming the door behind him. She sank to the floor, sobbing silently as the reality of his rejection sank in. Her worst fears had come true, not because of anything she'd done, but because of doubts planted by ignorance and insecurity. The fallout. Over the next few weeks, Daniel distanced himself further, spending nights at a hotel and avoiding any meaningful conversation about reconciliation. Eventually, he hired a lawyer, filing for separation under the guise of irreconcilable differences. To the outside world, he framed it as a mutual decision, citing career demands and personal growth. Only Sophia knew the truth, that his pride and suspicion had driven him away. For Sophia, the pain was unbearable. Friends and family rallied around her, offering support and encouragement, but none could fully understand the depth of her loss. Raising Ethan and Emma alone became both a blessing and a burden. On one hand, she cherished every moment with her children, determined to give them a happy childhood despite their father's absence. On the other, she couldn't shake the lingering shame of being accused unjustly, a wound that refused to heal. Meanwhile, Daniel convinced himself he'd made the right choice. He justified his actions by telling himself he deserved answers, that no man should raise children who weren't truly his. Yet deep down, guilt gnawed at him, whispering truths he wasn't ready to face. Little did he know, the answers he sought would come far too late and change everything he thought he knew about family, loyalty, and love. 10 years can feel like an eternity when you're piecing together a broken family. For Sophia Harper, those years were marked by sleepless nights, endless sacrifices, and a quiet determination to shield her children from the pain of rejection. Yet despite her efforts, the absence of Daniel loomed large over their lives, a shadow that neither time nor distance could erase. Ethan and Emma grew up in a world shaped by their mother's resilience. To them, she was both parent and protector, a woman who juggled work, school events, and bedtime stories with unwavering grace. They admired her strength, but couldn't help noticing the sadness that sometimes crept into her eyes, a fleeting glimpse of something unspoken, something they weren't yet old enough to understand. Meanwhile, Daniel lived a life far removed from the one he'd left behind. Though outwardly successful, he carried the weight of unresolved guilt, haunted by memories of the family he walked away from. Two worlds collided only in moments of reflection, moments that grew more frequent as the years passed. Sophia's quiet strength. Raising Ethan and Emma alone wasn't easy, but Sophia refused to let bitterness define her. She worked tirelessly as a graphic designer, often pulling late hours to ensure her children had everything they needed. Her tiny suburban home became a sanctuary filled with laughter, creativity, and warmth, qualities she hoped would overshadow the void left by Daniel's departure. To protect the twins from unnecessary heartache, Sophia crafted a narrative about their father that skirted the truth without outright lying. He had to leave for work, she told them whenever they asked why he wasn't around. But he loves you very much. At first, the explanation satisfied their young minds. As toddlers, Ethan and Emma accepted it without question, too busy exploring the world to dwell on what they didn't have. But as they grew older, cracks began to form in the story. Why did other kids' dads show up at soccer games or science fairs? Why hadn't Daniel sent birthday cards or called to wish them happy holidays? Sophia saw the questions brewing in their curious eyes and braced herself for the inevitable conversation. She knew the truth would come out eventually, but not yet. Not until they were ready. The twins' curiosity grows. By age 10, Ethan and Emma were inseparable yet strikingly different. Ethan inherited his mother's introspective nature, preferring books and puzzles to social gatherings. Emma, on the other hand, was a whirlwind of energy, excelling in sports and drama club while charming everyone she met. Despite their contrasting personalities, they shared a deep bond and a growing fascination with the mystery of their father. It started innocently enough. During a class assignment where students were tasked with creating family trees, Ethan raised his hand hesitantly. "Mrs. Carter," he asked, "what if you don't know much about your dad?" The teacher smiled kindly. "Well, Ethan, sometimes families are complicated. If you want, we can focus on the relatives you do know." But Ethan wasn't satisfied. That evening, he approached Sophia during dinner, his expression unusually serious. "Mom, why doesn't Dad ever visit, or call, or anything?" Sophia froze, her fore covering midair. She glanced at Emma, who watched intently, clearly interested in the answer. Taking a deep breath, she set her utensils down and reached across the table to take Ethan's hand. "Your dad had some things he needed to figure out," she began carefully. "Things that made it hard for him to stay. But that doesn't mean he doesn't care about you. He just hasn't found a way to be part of our lives again." Emma frowned, tilting her head. "But why? What kind of things?" Sophia hesitated, searching for words that wouldn't burden them with adult complexities. "Sometimes people make mistakes, sweetheart, big ones, and fixing them takes time." Though her answers seemed to placate them temporarily, the twins' curiosity only intensified. One Saturday afternoon, while Sophia ran errands, Ethan snuck into her bedroom and unearthed an old photo album tucked beneath a stack of blankets. Flipping through its pages, he discovered faded images of a younger, smiling Daniel standing beside Sophia at weddings, barbecues, and holiday gatherings. There were even a few pictures of Daniel holding baby Ethan and Emma, though his expression in those photos was distant, almost uncomfortable. Emma joined him on the bed, peering over his shoulder. "Wow, he looks so different here," she murmured, pointing to a candid shot of Daniel laughing at someone's joke. "Do you think he misses us?" Ethan shrugged, conflicted. "I dunno, maybe. Or maybe he's happier without us." Their whispered conversation ended abruptly when Sophia returned home, catching them red-handed. Instead of scolding them, she sat down beside them, gently closing the album. "You shouldn't snoop," she said softly, though her tone lacked anger. "But I understand why you're curious. Just give me time, okay? Someday I'll tell you everything." Daniel's new life. While Sophia navigated the challenges of single parenthood, Daniel built a new existence miles away. He remarried a woman named Claire, a cheerful, no-nonsense accountant who adored order and routine. Together, they settled into a comfortable rhythm, attending neighborhood block parties and hosting Sunday dinners for friends. On paper, Daniel appeared to have moved on completely. Yet beneath the surface, cracks began to show. Claire noticed his habit of zoning out during conversations, especially when topics turned to family or parenting. Once, during a heated argument, she accused him of being emotionally unavailable. "You act like you've got secrets," she snapped. "Whatever baggage you brought into this marriage, deal with it or get out." Her words stung because they hit close to home. Daniel did have secrets, ones he couldn't bring himself to confront. At night, he stared at the ceiling, replaying the image of Sophia cradling newborn Ethan and Emma. Had he been wrong to leave? Could he have handled things differently? His guilt manifested in small ways. He avoided baby showers and skipped family-oriented movies, unable to stomach reminders of what he'd lost. Occasionally, he considered reaching out to Sophia, not to reconcile, but simply to check on the twins. Each time, pride stopped him. How could he face them after abandoning them for so long? A chance encounter. Fate has a way of intervening when least expected. One crisp autumn afternoon, Daniel found himself waiting in line at a coffee shop downtown. As he scrolled absently through his phone, a familiar voice broke through the hum of conversation. "Dad?" Startled, Daniel looked up to see Ethan standing before him, clutching a tray of drinks. The boy wore a soccer jersey and sneakers caked with mud, his blonde hair tousled from practice. Behind him, Emma peeked out shyly, clutching a backpack adorned with cartoon stickers. For a moment, time seemed to freeze. Daniel's throat tightened as he took in their faces, the same faces that had once fueled his doubts, now older and wiser. They bore little resemblance to him, yet there was something undeniably familiar in their expressions. Sophia's kindness, her resilience. "Hi," Ethan continued awkwardly, shifting his weight. "We didn't know you came here." "I, Daniel stammered, struggling to find words. I didn't expect to see you either. An awkward silence followed, punctuated only by the barista calling Ethan's name. Realizing the moment might slip away entirely, Daniel cleared his throat. Look, I'm sorry for running into you like this. It's been a long time. Emma stepped forward timidly, her big blue eyes searching his face. Are you coming back? The question caught him off guard, its simplicity cutting straight to the heart of his regret. Before he could respond, Ethan cut in, his tone defensive. Forget it, Em. He's probably too busy. No, Daniel said quickly, surprising even himself. That's not true. I've thought about you both. A lot. Ethan crossed his arms skeptically. Then why haven't you called or visited? Daniel opened his mouth to explain, then closed it again, realizing how hollow excuses would sound. Instead, he offered the only thing he could, honesty. Because I messed up, badly, and I didn't know how to fix it. Emma studied him curiously, as if trying to decide whether to believe him. Finally, she nodded slowly. Okay, but you should try. With that, the twins turned and left, leaving Daniel standing alone in the crowded cafe. His hands trembled as he gripped the counter, overwhelmed by a flood of emotions he hadn't allowed himself to feel in years. Perhaps it wasn't too late to make amends. Perhaps with effort, he could reclaim a piece of the life he'd thrown away. The days following the coffee shop encounter weighed heavily on Daniel Harper. For years, he had convinced himself that walking away from Sophia and the twins was justified, that pride and principle outweighed sentimentality. Yet seeing Ethan and Emma face to face shattered those carefully constructed defenses. Their resemblance to Sophia, their warm smiles, their quiet curiosity, made it impossible to deny the connection they shared. And yet their blonde hair and blue eyes still stirred doubts in the recesses of his mind, doubts that refused to fade entirely. Haunted by guilt and uncertainty, Daniel wrestled with what to do next. Should he reach out to Sophia, apologize for the past? Or would any attempt at reconciliation only reopen old wounds? He spent sleepless nights replaying the brief conversation with the twins, dissecting every word, every expression. Emma's innocent question, "Are you coming back?" echoed in his thoughts like a plea he couldn't ignore. Finally, unable to bear the weight of indecision, Daniel made up his mind. It was time to confront the truth, not just about his relationship with Sophia, but about the family he'd abandoned. He picked up the phone and dialed her number, bracing himself for rejection. A fragile reunion. Sophia answered on the third ring, her voice cautious but composed. Hello. Sophia, Daniel began, his tone hesitant. It's me, Daniel. There was a long pause before she responded, her words measured. I see. What do you want? I ran into the kids at a cafe downtown. They seemed, he faltered, unsure how to finish the sentence. They seemed surprised to see me. They probably were, Sophia replied coolly. You haven't exactly been part of their lives. Her bluntness stung, but Daniel deserved it. I know, he admitted, his voice tinged with regret. And I'm sorry, truly, but that's why I'm calling, to try to make things right. If there's even a chance. Another pause stretched between them, filled with unspoken pain and lingering resentment. Finally, Sophia sighed. Fine. Come over tomorrow afternoon. Ethan and Emma deserve answers. And so do you. Relief washed over Daniel, though tempered by apprehension. Thank you, he said quietly. I'll be there. Awkward beginnings. The next day, Daniel arrived at Sophia's home, a modest house surrounded by flower beds and a white picket fence. She greeted him at the door, her expression unreadable. Time had softened the sharp edges of her youth, leaving behind a woman who radiated strength and resilience. For a moment, Daniel felt like the young man who had once fallen in love with her all those years ago. Come in, Sophia said simply, stepping aside to let him enter. Inside, the living room buzzed with nervous energy. Ethan and Emma sat side by side on the couch, their wide eyes fixed on Daniel as he took a seat across from them. The air crackled with unanswered questions and unresolved emotions. So Ethan began after an uncomfortable silence, his arms crossed defensively. Why are you here? Daniel hesitated, choosing his words carefully. Because I owe you both an explanation, and because I miss being part of your lives. Emma tilted her head, studying him curiously. But why did you leave in the first place? Before Daniel could respond, Sophia interjected, her voice firm but gentle. Let's take this one step at a time. You've waited 10 years for answers, Daniel. You can wait a little longer. He nodded, acknowledging her point. Turning back to the twins, he continued, "When you were born, I had doubts about whether you were mine." He glanced at Sophia briefly before focusing on the children again. "You didn't look like me or your mother, and instead of trusting her, I let my pride get in the way. I accused her of something terrible and walked out without giving either of us a chance to work through it." Ethan frowned, clearly skeptical. "So you left because you thought Mom cheated on you?" "In a way, yes," Daniel admitted, shame coloring his voice. "But looking back, I realize how unfair that was. To her, and to you too." Emma chewed her lip thoughtfully. "Does that mean you're our dad for sure? Or are we adopted or something?" The weeks following Daniel's visit to Sophia's home were filled with tentative steps toward reconciliation. He began attending Ethan and Emma's school events, soccer matches, science fairs, and parent-teacher conferences, always careful not to overstep or intrude. At first, the twins remained guarded, their interactions polite but distant. Yet slowly, cracks in their defenses began to show. A shared laugh during a game of catch, a genuine smile after a heartfelt compliment, small moments that hinted at the possibility of healing. Still, lingering doubts plagued Daniel. Though Sophia had explained the role of donor sperm in the twins' conception, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. Was he truly their father or merely a bystander in their lives? The question gnawed at him, fueling his insecurities and threatening to undo the fragile progress he'd made. One evening, as he sat alone in his apartment staring at old family photos, an idea struck him. What if there was a way to confirm the truth once and for all? Modern science offered answers that generations before could only dream of, and perhaps those answers would finally put his mind at ease. Seeking certainty. The next day, Daniel approached Sophia with a proposition. "I want to take a DNA test," he said bluntly, his tone leaving no room for argument, for Ethan and Emma. Sophia raised an eyebrow, clearly taken aback. "A DNA test? Why?" "Because I need to know," Daniel replied, his voice tinged with desperation. "Not just for me, but for them. They deserve clarity, don't you think?" Sophia hesitated, weighing the implications. On one hand, she understood his need for closure. On the other, she worried about reopening wounds that had barely begun to heal. "And what happens if the results aren't what you expect?" she asked pointedly. "Are you prepared for that?" "Yes," Daniel insisted, though uncertainty flickered in his eyes. "Whatever the outcome, I'll deal with it. But I can't move forward without knowing for sure." After a long pause, Sophia nodded reluctantly. "Fine, but we do this together. No secrets this time." Waiting for answers. The process of arranging the DNA test was surprisingly straightforward. A local lab provided kits for cheek swabs, which Daniel, Ethan, and Emma completed under Sophia's watchful eye. As they sealed the samples and sent them off for analysis, a tense silence hung in the air. Each member of the family carried their own fears and hopes, unsure of how the results would impact their fragile bond. In the days that followed, Daniel found himself obsessively checking his phone, waiting for the lab's call. Sleep eluded him, his mind racing with possibilities. What if the test proved he wasn't biologically related to the twins? Would they reject him entirely? Or worse, would he retreat back into the shell of denial that had defined so much of his life? Meanwhile, Ethan and Emma grappled with their own anxieties. Emma confided in her mother one night, tears streaming down her face. "What if he leaves again, Mom? What if the test says he's not our dad?" Sophia pulled her close, stroking her hair soothingly. "No matter what the results say, you're still you. And Daniel is still the man who helped create you. Even if biology isn't the whole story. Love doesn't come from DNA, sweetheart. It comes from choice." Her words offered little comfort, but Emma clung to them like a lifeline, hoping they would hold true when the moment of truth arrived. The results. Finally, the call came. The lab technician confirmed that the results were ready and invited Daniel to pick them up in person. Nervous but determined, he drove to the facility, his hands gripping the steering wheel tightly. When he entered the office and accepted the envelope containing the report, his heart pounded so loudly he thought it might burst. Sitting in his car, he opened the document with trembling fingers. The summary was brief but definitive. Daniel Harper is the biological father of Ethan Harper and Emma Harper. Relief washed over him in waves, followed by a crushing realization. None of his doubts had mattered. From the beginning, Ethan and Emma had been his children, not because of genetics, but because of the love and responsibility he had abandoned. The truth hadn't changed. Only his perception of it had. Facing the truth. Armed with the results, Daniel returned to Sophia's home later that evening. She greeted him at the door, her expression wary but hopeful. "Well?" she asked simply. "They're mine," Daniel said, his voice thick with emotion. "Biologically, genetically, whatever you want to call it. They're my kids." Sophia exhaled sharply, visibly relieved. "Good. Now maybe we can stop pretending biology is the only thing that matters." Her words hit Daniel like a punch to the gut. He sank onto the couch, running a hand through his hair. "You're right. I've been so focused on proving something, anything, that I lost sight of what really matters. Ethan and Emma are my children because I chose to be their father, not because of some piece of paper." Sophia sat beside him, her gaze steady. "It took you 10 years to figure that out. Don't waste any more time doubting yourself or them." A lesson in parenthood. That night, Daniel gathered Ethan and Emma in the living room, holding the lab report in his hands. "I have something to tell you both," he began, his voice trembling slightly. "The DNA test confirmed that I'm your biological father, but honestly, that doesn't change anything." Ethan frowned, confused. "What do you mean?" "I mean," Daniel continued, meeting their eyes earnestly, "that being a parent isn't about bloodlines or genetics. It's about showing up. About loving you, supporting you, and doing everything I can to make up for the years I missed. Whether I'm your dad by biology or not, I want to be your dad in every way that counts." Emma blinked back tears, her lower lip quivering. "Does that mean you're staying for real this time?" "Yes," Daniel promised, his voice firm despite the lump in his throat. "If you'll let me." For a moment, silence filled the room. Then, tentatively, Emma reached out and hugged him. Ethan followed suit, wrapping his arms around Daniel with a mixture of caution and relief. In that embrace, Daniel felt a weight lift from his shoulders, a burden of guilt and doubt replaced by the warmth of acceptance. Moving forward. In the weeks that followed, Daniel dedicated himself to rebuilding his relationship with the twins. He attended every event, helped with homework, and listened intently to their stories about school and friends. Though trust took time to fully restore, small victories reminded him of the progress they were making. One afternoon, as Daniel coached Ethan's soccer team during practice, Emma approached him with a thoughtful expression. "Dad," she said softly, testing the word as if unsure how it would feel. "Do you think we'll ever be like a normal family?" Daniel knelt down to meet her gaze, smiling gently. "We'll never be normal, Em. But we can be something better, something stronger. Families aren't perfect. They're built on love, forgiveness, and second chances. And I promise you, I'm not going anywhere this time." Emma smiled back, her faith in him growing with each passing day. Months passed, and the Harper household began to transform in subtle but meaningful ways. The once empty chair at dinner was now occupied by Daniel, who had made it his mission to be present for every milestone, big or small. From helping Emma perfect her cartwheel routine to cheering Ethan on during soccer tournaments, Daniel threw himself into fatherhood with a fervor that surprised even himself. Each moment shared with the twins was a step toward repairing the decade-long void he'd left behind. Yet, while Ethan and Emma gradually warmed to him, Sophia remained guarded. Though she appreciated Daniel's efforts, years of hurt and betrayal couldn't simply vanish overnight. She watched silently from the sidelines, observing how he interacted with their children and waiting for signs of consistency. Trust, she knew, wasn't rebuilt through grand gestures alone. It required time, patience, and unwavering commitment. For Daniel, earning Sophia's trust became as important as reconnecting with the twins. He understood that true reconciliation meant addressing not just his absence, but also the pain he caused her. It was a daunting task, but one he approached with humility and determination. Small steps toward healing. One crisp autumn evening, after tucking Ethan and Emma into bed, Daniel found Sophia sitting on the porch swing, wrapped in a blanket as she gazed at the stars. He hesitated before joining her, unsure if she wanted company. "Mind if I sit?" he asked softly, gesturing to the space beside her. Sophia glanced at him briefly, then nodded. "Sure." They sat in silence for a while, the rhythmic creak of the swing punctuating the stillness. Finally, Daniel spoke, his voice tinged with vulnerability. "I've been thinking about everything, about what I did to you, to all of you, and I don't know if I'll ever fully make up for it." "You're right," Sophia replied, her tone measured but not unkind. "You can't erase the past. But actions speak louder than words, Daniel. So far, you've done more in these past few months than you did in 10 years. That counts for something." Her acknowledgement caught him off guard, stirring a mix of relief and gratitude. "Thank you," he said sincerely, "for letting me try, for giving me a chance to be better. Sophia turned to face him, her dark eyes searching his. Don't thank me yet. You've got a long way to go before we're truly okay. But I see the effort, and I won't deny that it matters, to me, and especially to the kids. Daniel nodded, understanding the weight of her words. I won't stop trying, he vowed. Not with them, and not with you. Though Sophia didn't respond immediately, a faint smile played on her lips, a sign, perhaps, that forgiveness might someday bloom where resentment once festered. Moments of connection. As winter approached, Daniel continued finding opportunities to strengthen his bond with the twins. One Saturday morning, he surprised Emma by volunteering to help with her school play, a chaotic production of The Wizard of Oz. Armed with a hammer and nails, he joined the set-building crew, laughing alongside parents and teachers as they pieced together plywood castles and painted rainbow backdrops. Emma beamed with pride as she introduced him to her classmates. This is my dad, she announced boldly, linking arms with him. He's really good at fixing things. Daniel chuckled, ruffling her hair affectionately. Well, I'm glad someone thinks so. Meanwhile, Ethan discovered a shared love of chess with his father during a rainy afternoon stuck indoors. What started as a casual game evolved into weekly matches, each session filled with playful banter and strategic lessons. For Ethan, these moments weren't just about learning moves. They were about feeling seen and valued in a way he hadn't experienced before. Even Sophia noticed the change, watching Daniel teach Ethan the intricacies of rook maneuvers or cheer wildly when Emma nailed her lines during rehearsals. She saw glimpses of the man she once loved, the man who, beneath layers of insecurity and pride, had always cared deeply, even if he struggled to show it. A heartfelt conversation. One evening, after putting the twins to bed, Daniel approached Sophia in the kitchen, where she was washing dishes. Can we talk? He asked, leaning against the counter. Sophia dried her hands and turned to face him, sensing the seriousness in his tone. Of course. Daniel took a deep breath, gathering his thoughts. I owe you an apology, not just for leaving, but for doubting you. For accusing you of something unforgivable without giving you a chance to explain. I let fear and insecurity cloud my judgment, and in doing so, I hurt the people I claim to love most. His words hung in the air, raw and unfiltered. Sophia studied him carefully, noting the sincerity in his expression. After a pause, she responded, Do you regret walking away? Yes, Daniel admitted without hesitation. Every single day. Leaving was the biggest mistake of my life. But coming back has shown me what truly matters and reminded me of the kind of man I want to be. Sophia nodded slowly, her gaze softening. It's not easy forgiving someone who broke your heart, but seeing how hard you've worked to reconnect with Ethan and Emma, it helps. They need you, Daniel, and maybe in some small way I do too. Her admission brought tears to Daniel's eyes, which he quickly blinked away. I'll spend the rest of my life making sure neither of you regrets letting me back in, he promised, his voice thick with emotion. Though Sophie didn't vocalize her forgiveness outright, her willingness to keep moving forward spoke volumes. For the first time in years, hope flickered between them, a fragile flame nurtured by mutual effort and understanding. A new beginning. Spring arrived, bringing with it a sense of renewal. The Harpers celebrated Easter together for the first time in over a decade, hosting a backyard barbecue filled with laughter, music, and homemade pies. Neighbors commented on how close-knit the family seemed, unaware of the rocky road that had led them here. During a quiet moment, as Emma chased butterflies across the lawn and Ethan challenged Daniel to another round of cornhole, Sophia stood beside him, watching their children play. They're happy, she observed, her voice warm with contentment. They deserve to be, Daniel replied, smiling as he watched Emma giggle uncontrollably after tripping over her own feet. Turning to Sophia, he added, and so do you. She met his gaze, her smile tinged with cautious optimism. Maybe happiness isn't something we find, it's something we build, together. Daniel nodded, reaching out to squeeze her hand gently. Then let's keep building. Lessons learned. In the months that followed, the Harpers embraced their second chance at family life, navigating challenges with open communication and mutual support. Daniel learned to prioritize presence over perfection, recognizing that being a parent or a partner meant showing up consistently, flaws and all. Sophia, in turn, allowed herself to let go of lingering resentment, focusing instead on the joy of having a united front for their children. Ethan and Emma thrived under their parents' renewed commitment, blossoming into confident, compassionate individuals. They no longer questioned whether they belonged. Instead, they reveled in the love and stability surrounding them. One evening, as the family gathered around the dining table for a celebratory meal, Emma raised her glass impulsively. To us, she declared, her blue eyes sparkling, the best team ever. Everyone laughed, clinking glasses in agreement. In that moment, Daniel realized the truth. Families aren't defined by genetics, appearances, or societal expectations. They're shaped by the bonds we nurture, the choices we make to stand together, even when the path is difficult. As he looked around the table at the faces he cherished most, Daniel felt a profound sense of gratitude. He hadn't been given a perfect family, but he'd been given a chance to create one. And that he decided was more than enough.